one of the primary themes of the book is lambasting the lack of any normative opinion on what we should be building in technology. But then there's also a lot of discussion about how to build technology and lionizing, glorifying the Silicon Valley culture that will iteratively travel and define and figure out what it is to build. That balance between, I think you use the analogy of the fox and the hedgehog in the book. How do you explain this, like not enough opinion here, too much opinion here? How do you balance those things together?
What does it take to build the world's most innovative company? Check out this video to discover the radical approach Palantir is using to redefine tech.
Yeah, these are really cool questions. I'll start with what I think is going on here, and then I'll try to unpack it. I think a very successful structure that's of any kind, that where the structure is defined by it has to have more output than input. So you could call that a business, but honestly, that could be anything. You're a great writer, a philanthropy that was actually doing important things, something that may exist. You have to simultaneously drive deep enough to get a unity and be open to the fact that you're not far along enough to solve all the problems, and then drive those things far enough again so you get to the point of artistry where the artist, whether that's, say, me in an area or you in an area or everyone here, can go to the final mile beyond what the non-artist could understand. So you're really getting a lot of the contradictions into the structure. Now, what does that mean in practice? It means, okay, so if you just take, we are a product building company that uses our primary form of research for doing that, our forward and deployed engineers. That is massively a huge, it's an irreconcilable contradiction from the perspective of most business people. But if you're able to do that and you're able to push the frontier of the product into the services, you can unlock a lot of things. And again, you can set up the table for a world where you could unlock more with AI and LLMs. And that's only possible where you have a concatenation of people who are working at their complete and very unusual spike so that they can see in the services productizations.
The concept of blending services and products in a seemingly contradictory way is fascinating. Can you think of any other company that has successfully bridged this gap while pushing the boundaries of both fields? By pushing the frontier of products into services, isn't Palantir creating the groundwork for an AI-driven future that others might miss?
That's the product internal version. The moral, that's also, you do need a bias of how to build product, what a product does, what it would mean to build a product, meaning we build what it ought to be, not what basically in the past venture capitalists and analysts want. That's the kind of overarching framework. But then the way you actually advance that is by being open to experimentation, open to clients having new data sets and new insights. On the societal side, I think one of the things that's very corrosive about discourse in the West is you're forced into these very farcical, obviously simplistic things like tech is good. Okay, I don't think anything as powerful as technology is inherently good or bad. It could obviously, it's like obviously what we're doing at Palantir could be used for nefarious bad things, which is why we've always restricted what we sell to, in my view, the forces of good. Now, you can debate, and there would be a debate in this room about who are the forces of good. But then we drive that debate more openly than any other company I've ever seen, certainly any company that's ever gone public in the history of at least American companies. I know of no others. We're not hiding behind what we believe. In fact, it's a little, but we're saying within the prism of what we believe to be good.
The complexity of technology's morality is a crucial point. Palantir doesn't just build products for any purpose, but for what it considers the forces of good. How many companies are transparent about the ethical lines they draw in their work? Isn't this openness a key factor that differentiates Palantir in a world where tech is often treated as inherently good or bad without nuance?
I believe the West is superior And I believe it's actually superior, especially in the places where the people disagree with me. So most people who think the West is not superior have a narrative where the West is somehow trampled on human rights and is pro-bigotry. And of course there are problems with the West, but on that very score, the West is the only set of nations that have actually ever cared and done anything about this. As a culture and as a company, we, on the product side and on development and how we organize, are anti-platitude and pro-contradiction. We build the best products in the world by starting with services. But we're aware, and then we're willing to fight for decades to show that was the right way to do it. On the other hand, we expand that by finding like the contradictory data sets that allow us to deepen and deepen. And then on the outside, flowing into the inside, I see that as tailored to, and we're not obfuscating the complexity of what we're doing. I would say as a final feature, Palantir, for as controversial as we've been throughout our history, and as likely as it seemed to everybody involved in Palantir that you were doing a noble project for which you would not be paid until about 3 years ago. One of the reasons we got the best talent in the world and could organize them in a truly radical way was we never, ever tried to feed the most talented people in the world a diet of obvious, synthetic, slightly carcinogenic ingredients that smart people do not believe, and that it's like you get everybody you would want and you don't get anyone you do want.
Palantir's success lies in its unwavering commitment to building products through a process of contradiction and complexity. By rejecting oversimplified answers and embracing the hard work of developing and refining, they've attracted the best talent. Their transparent approach to what they believe in and their willingness to fight for those beliefs is what has made them stand out as a company that truly challenges norms.
Yeah. Let's double-clicking on that, on talent and on people. Another thing drawing the book and the external diagnostic with the internal diagnostic is there's a lot of talk about people that our way of life is responsible for in the past that were also deeply flawed in some way, shape, or form. And oftentimes internally it's a lot of we need people with spikes, we don't need people well-rounded. Talk a lot about actually really seeking intellectual conflict. Do you want no assholes or all assholes? Maybe there's not a binary answer to that question along the way. But looking at kind of people embracing flawed people, or maybe just embracing real people, the actual motivations that are required of them to do things, or how to motivate them in real ways versus fake what you'd like to be actually motivating. You talk a little bit about how you view internal and external talent.
Palantir's focus on embracing flawed, real people rather than idealized versions of talent is a striking approach. Isn't it crucial that a company thrives on intellectual conflict, valuing raw authenticity over perfection? Can this embrace of imperfection actually be the key to unlocking innovation and fostering a culture where real, meaningful progress happens?
This won't be news to anyone internally. Externally, I actually think a lot of the questions externally are interestingly but is it true actually that we do these things internally? Is it true that there are a lot of people who are new to Palantir because we went from being 3 years ago a niche company to being now millions and millions of people view us, and we have millions of shareholders. And so the people who are newer to Palantir, who haven't watched these things over the last 20 years, may not be aware. I've been saying, and we've been doing this for 20 years, and yes, 20 years ago. But one of the biggest things we do here is, historically, when you go to, many of you went to elite universities, and I would say especially those universities, they seem to want, or getting into them, they seem to want people with all A's, and you have a sport, and you have your teachers write glowing recommendations, and I don't know, there's just a general vibe, you're going to be governor someday kind of thing. That's what they want. That's not really what we're looking for at Palantir, honestly. What I want when I talk to somebody, and I did a lot of the early recruiting, and I'm walking around here and now still as involved as I can be. I really want somebody who's A triple plus at something, and I tend to think it's more likely they're A triple plus at something if they're F minus at something too. Now, there are exceptions. The great Bob McGrew, great at everything. And I don't mean that facetiously. There may be someone out there in this audience like that. I'm mentioning Bob because
not me.
Not anyone running the company now. And although Bob, you're very much welcome back, a really decent, wonderful person. And but it's just assume that A, you're not Bob, and B, that's not as a matter of rule. That's just in general a real exception. And there have been roughly 8,000 people who are either at Palantir or we're at Palantir. We're just under 4,000. I can only think of Bob. And I interact with thousands and thousands of people. If you think you're that person, it's like this famous saying when you're playing poker at a table and you don't know who the mark is, it's you.
By seeking talent that may be unbalanced in their skills, excelling at one thing but struggling in others, Palantir has developed a truly distinctive model for innovation. Could it be that such imbalances foster an environment where individuals aren't afraid to challenge the status quo and take risks? Rather than trying to force a perfect, cookie-cutter employee, Palantir nurtures a group of unique thinkers who, despite their flaws, can create something greater than the sum of their parts. Isn't this a reminder that in both people and ideas, it's the imperfections that often lead to the greatest success?